Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of HomeKit Insider. You've got me, as always, Andrew O'Hara, and joining me this week, I am very excited. It is Chris LaPré, who is the head of technology for the CSA, which, for people who have been around for a while, is the organization that develops and releases Matter. So everyone can be very excited for a lot of Matter-focused talk on this episode. Thank you, Chris, for joining this week.
Thanks a lot, Andrew, for having me. I was really excited to be on the show.
I know we got to chat last time at CES, and there's a lot of Matter stuff that is coming up. So we'll have a lot of quick things to get into. Before we get into the episode, this episode is brought to you by Zocdoc. We'll have more on them in a minute. So let's go ahead and start off with some news for the week, Chris. Govee is releasing their Neon Rope Light 2. This was announced at CES, and now this is available to order. So just hitting the high points again on this for anyone who missed like the CES news. Basically, it's a light strip that is meant to go on your wall. The new model is more flexible than before, it is lighter than before, and has new clips that make it easier to put into different shapes on your wall. They also have a new AI lighting bot that is able to help you like come up with different lighting scenes. You can just describe in natural language what you want it to do, and it can provide lighting scenes for you. There's also a new feature in the app where you can like point the camera at the rope light on the wall, and it's able to automatically map it and all the different zones and everything. It comes in both black and white colors, $69.99 for the 3-meter version and $99.99 for the 5-meter version. And I'm sure most exciting to Chris here is this does support Matter. It is Matter over Wi-Fi, one of the few Govee products that kind of integrates with Apple Home that way.
Yeah, I mean, more options for lighting, across the ecosystem, but particularly with the Apple stuff, I think is just cool. You know, it's something that has been needed a little bit on that Apple side of things. So it's great to have more options.
I agree, and I've generally liked the Govee stuff, but it's always been disappointing because they've never supported Apple Home natively. It's always been the other platforms. But now they've embraced Matter. Like, this is one of the big areas where Matter's actually been really helpful for brands like Govee that were not in that Apple ecosystem. So
Right.
that's available.
Yeah, it's a little more expensive to be in the Apple ecosystem, right, for a low cost manufacturer. So I think Matter really, for some of those companies, have been really exciting to be able to get them into that Apple ecosystem.
I agree. Well, before we get into like we all have all the matters to talk about, but do you think there will ever be a way to deal with something like these lights and many others have like the multiple addressable zones, that RGB IC stuff where you can like have all sorts of different colors in one piece of rope light? Right now, like in Apple Home and everything, it's like one thing, that's it. Like you can make it white, you can make it red, anything you want. Do you think that'll ever be exposed to Matter and to things like Apple Home in that end?
So that's a great segue. I don't know what the right word for that. We do have a project that's working on addressable lighting. So I'm really excited about that myself. I've always, loved the chase scene, chase light scenes, the bouncing back and forth and all that. A different kind of light scenes, and all that is enabled by this work stream that we've got going. It's relatively speaking just underway, but it should be available later this year and potentially early next year. And then of course, Apple has to take it up and everything, but I believe they're interested in this as well. And so, this should be the entry point, for that exact, use case that you just mentioned. And for Christmas trees too, like all the different scenes and all that kind of stuff. I think that's pretty exciting.
That would be awesome. That would be huge for on the Apple Home side of things because right now there's nothing like that. I mean, Nanoleaf has been making like all those lighting panels on the walls for years, and you have to do these annoying scenes in the Nanoleaf app that sync over to Home, and then add other accessories to those scenes. So having that native would be a huge feature for Matter to be able to add.
I don't think Samsung SmartThings or Google does anything better, really. So it's just a hard thing to get the interface right, and so I think a standard like Matter could really help. Just sort of like, okay, here's the low bar, here's what you have to support, and it's what both the ecosystem providers and the light manufacturer want. So it really can, it should be the thing that kickstarts that, which is something that all companies should have, in my opinion. It's just a cool thing, and you want to do it. You see all these, like you said, these different lights on the strip. How do I get this to do something more like what I want than the five options you give me, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And especially things like this where you can create like a rocket ship or something and then make like the rocket ship blue and then the back of it like red for like flames coming out or something. Like there's so many different things you could do with it. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Well, the next thing here in the news, the Dyson 360 Vis Nav robovac is available in the US. Now, I will say up front that it does not work natively with Apple Home, and Dyson is also not commenting on whether or not it may get Matter. So it's been in the EU for a while. They say they've updated it since then to have even better navigation before launching it here in the US. A couple of just the high points. Dyson says this is twice the suction of the competition, even on the low end of its like spectrum of suction. Has no auto emptying dock though, no mopping, no AI stuff, no security camera tie-ins. It feels like it's missing a lot of the big features, especially for a $1,200 robot. But it comes out March 19th. If anyone is interested in getting one, what do you think about this? I don't know if you use like a RoboVac in your home, but do you think they've got, something that's unique here?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Dyson's always been expensive, and I think they market to that, and they're first of all, let me say they've been a fantastic member for us. They have great contributions to the working group, not just on the robot vacuum side, but on the air purifier side, and a lot of other things. So Dyson's been a great member. I can't speak to whether or not this is going to get Matter or anything like that. I believe it makes sense that they've contributed to the Matter robot vacuum stuff. That at some point they're going to come out with a Matter robot vacuum. And then on the Apple side, again, like we were saying before, that makes sense that would probably be Apple's, again, I can't speak for Apple either, but that would be Apple's entry into this is when there are Matter robot vacuums. It again seems like the low hanging fruit, versus integration with all the different robot vacuums separately. But yeah, I mean, I have a Dyson robot, not this one, not robot, sorry, Dyson vacuum, and it's great. I have non-Dyson vacuums, and they're also great. It's it's an interesting company, right?
I know I generally like their stuff. I don't even mind the bright blue color that they made this thing. But I just think like at $1,200, there are a lot of really good bots at 1,200. And I don't know if this is true, but I've heard from other robotic companies that the amount of extra debris you pick up with suction above a certain level is like a fraction of a percentage more. So in their minds, like it's not pertinent to put that level of suction into a robot because you're not getting that much more clean and you're making it louder, hurting battery life. This only has like an hour of battery life on it.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the Dyson ads always talk about the engineering behind it, and how they can get that higher level of suction, with that founder guy on it. And that, as an engineer, that's always been interesting to me. I think it's appealed to me. But also the price points don't appeal to me. So, but yeah, it's that, feature gizmo like an emptying dock or mopping versus, the engineering. And that's just the decisions they made. It's interesting to see how that goes forward. And if Matter comes into that, how did that play? And do they put Matter in a different vacuum, a cost reduced version of it, or how they approach Matter? I'm not sure how that's going to play out either.
Yeah, I'm curious because there's not really been a good Dyson RoboVac in the US. We've used like a Dyson stick vac for the longest time, and I love them. I actually like the design of them. Like you said, the engineering is really cool, and even though this doesn't have like that auto emptying dock, they did put a massive dust bin on it, so it holds more. But they just kind of left off half the features that everyone else has, and then we don't know if there's going to be Matter or not. It seems like a classic kind of Dyson thing. They leave off half the features with a high price tag. For a regular robot, I don't mind, but for something like this, I think the auto emptying bin is like a deal breaker, at least for me.
Interesting. Yeah. I think their feature set's higher in the UK too, right? They offer different products in the UK and Europe. So that's a
hmm
difference as well, but I'm not sure. I don't live there. So, but
Yeah, they've had more released in Europe, and this is like their uh, the first big one. I think there was one other one in the US a little while ago, but this one fixed a lot of things. designed for like larger US homes, and they made it a little bit, I think, thinner to go under furniture. A few other changes, but it'll be interesting. I'm excited because I do like their stuff, and I know a lot of people in the Apple Home ecosystem like Dyson because like the Homebridge support for Dyson is very verbose. A lot of people use Homebridge. I used it almost exclusively for my Dysons to bring their air purifiers in. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping they do more with Matter, but we'll see.
Yeah, like I said, they've definitely contributed to the air purifier side. Again, I can't speak to their roadmaps or something, but I'm really hoping that they come out with an air purifier here soon too. That's direct to, well, Matter, but also HomeKit then.
Yeah. Okay, last bit of news here. Sonos has a new set of in-ceiling speakers. These come in white. They have a stainless steel grill on them. It's an 8-inch in-ceiling speaker. They're $1,000 a pair. They are 20% larger 30mm tweeters and newly optimized waveguides, more natural sounding vocals, better high frequency dispersion. Tie these into your Sonos setup that you've already got now. Because of that, you're going to have features like, AirPlay support and bringing to the home app, all of that. I just always like the Sonos stuff. I know Wes and I talked about them on last week's episode, but yeah, if anyone's looking for some new in-ceiling speakers, Sonos has some new ones available to order, so people can check those out in the show notes. Well, Chris, we have so much to talk about with Matter. That is why you're here. Before we do, we got to take one quick ad break to talk about Zocdoc. I have used Zocdoc so many times. My wife has used Zocdoc, and now that we have a little one that I'm sure will constantly be sick because that seems to be the trend with children, probably going to use it even more. But what I love about Zocdoc is a free app to download. You can search through it to find the exact doctor you need, whether it's a specialty doctor or regular doctor. Do you want to see someone in person, or do you want to do like a remote telehealth appointment? You can also find out right there in the app if they take your insurance. You don't have to like book an appointment or call and get a hold of someone and then go in and then find out, oh, they don't take your insurance or whatever the whole situation is. It is a pain. I have dealt with it and I hate it. My wife recently used Zocdoc to book an appointment where she was able to just check in and stuff for everything online. She showed up, everyone was in the waiting room waiting, and she just bypassed everybody because she went through Zocdoc. She like walked in like Faith and she's like, hi, and walks back, and everyone looked very begrudgingly at her while they sat in a crowded waiting room. So please, if you have not tried Zocdoc, for all the times we've talked about them on the show, go ahead and check it out. So it is a free app and website where you can search online and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. So go to Zocdoc.com/HKI and download the Zocdoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That is ZocDoc.com/HKI, Zocdoc.com/HKI. As always, thank you to them for sponsoring this episode. So let's go ahead and start with, why don't you tell me, give us an overview of the CSA and, what we're going to be looking forward to this year or the near future, and your role in all that.
Yeah. So we are the Connectivity Standards Alliance. Trying to go through this quickly. We used to be the Zigbee Alliance, so we're still responsible for Zigbee, which is, Philips Hue and all the older IKEA stuff. The Alexa, had some Zigbee stuff in it as well. A couple other examples I probably should mention, but not coming to me right now. So we're still responsible for Zigbee. Zigbee will still have a good future. About 4 years ago, we started Matter, and so had to change our name from the Zigbee Alliance to the Connectivity Standards Alliance. And at that point in time, really tried to dedicate to what's holding back the IoT, in particular, the smart home, potentially smart buildings and other things. But right now, our membership is focused on smart home. So interoperability is a big piece of it. We'll talk a lot more about Matter, but product security is a next piece often. Why do you not want to buy smart devices for your home? Well, it's going to get hacked and then someone's going to be spying on me. So that's the next thing. We do have a product security announcement coming actually next week. So stay tuned for that. But then what's the next piece? So interoperability, is it going to work? Security, is it going to get hacked? Privacy. Once you've got a device connected anywhere, there's data on you. There's access to maybe your camera, or are you home or not? That information is sitting there somewhere. And right now, how does that information get conveyed to you? Everyone has different 30-page documents that you have to basically click through. How can we make that easier on both the manufacturers and consumers to consume that data. So those are sort of the three big pillars. And then in order to support that, we got a couple other small things going on, like access control, which is a credential that I can send you to get into my house, and medical health and wellness, where, it's going to look a little bit different for medical devices coming into Matter. So we have a separate work stream for that, but it's basically Matter devices there too. So, a lot going on, and that's mainly the focus.
Awesome. So what is your role as, overseeing like the technology side of everything?
Yeah, so I'm the head of technology. Have to really clarify that with we are very strongly a member-driven organization. So the members have to come and do the work. They have to decide what work we want to do. So I'm very much a little bit of a matchmaker there. I have to make sure we can find 3 or 4 or 5 companies that want to work on the same project, and then get those projects started and moving along, and then help the technical groups sort of get that work through to the end. And then also, present sort of roadmap type information where that's necessary. So it's a little bit more of a recordal head of technology versus, your typical CTO at a technology company, which is saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I can look for matches where I want them. I think irrigation is a really big topic that we kind of have to look at. Energy management, water management, those things are big sort of topics that I want to push. So I can try to find companies to get that. But if I can't find companies, then I can't just throw people at a project and get that done. But yeah, no, it's a really fun job.
Yeah, I do not envy that because you have like, if anyone does not know, like member organizations here, there's a ton of members, but I mean, we already talked about Dyson, but the big ones like Apple and Amazon and Samsung and Google, like these are all member organizations that are contributing and working on all this together. And while they're trying to make the Matter spec successful, they're also trying to keep their own competitive advantages. So I assume that can't always be an easy task to kind of work through things, right?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not easy swimming 24/7. But the members that we have are just amazing, right? Like I used to take a lot of credit for that, sort of like 2, 3 years ago. Yep, they're in the room, and yep, I'm keeping it moving along. But to be honest, now we've got a core team of people from those companies, and they're just amazing people to work with. They're just so respectful of everyone else's opinion and everything. So it's made that part of the job really easy in the last, you say, year and a half, 2 years. Certainly some misstarts in the beginning. There's some struggles to get that rolling, but that's all kind of in our past. And not everything, like every idea doesn't like get welcomed with open arms by every company because, like you said, they're trying to maintain some competitive advantages as well. But that makes sense, right? That like as head of technology, I'll often come up and say, yep, we want to be consumer first, and we want to audit, standardize all of this. That doesn't really make sense, right? If people can't make money, then they're not going to do it, and if nobody's doing it, then what good is it, right? So the bar has to really be set at the right level for consumers to win and companies to still be able to make money. And so it's that exchange that I think we've gotten really good at, where it makes that conversation go a lot more smoothly. And so, like I said, it's really been a lot of fun in the last year or two, and just a great team of people that we're working with from these members.
Cool. So I guess I want to start with some of the stuff that we're going to see in the more near future. I think the two of the biggest categories people are excited for, at least in our audience that I've seen, are cameras and robot vacuum cleaners. So robot vacuum cleaners are already in that latest, I think it was 1.2 spec that came out, and now we're just waiting for that to come. So how's that been going? What can you tell us about that? I know we saw a lot of robotic vacuum cleaners at CES that were promising Matter support this year. How did that development kind of go? And when do you think we might start to see some of these things actually hitting the market?
Yeah, so the development process there went pretty well. We have what we call a marketing requirements document that spells out all these features like mapping and all these other things. And a lot of the cool stuff got put to not MVP. So they're not supported in the first version of that, which again is to be expected. It's that agreement that we talked about. So that took a little bit of time there to go through that discussion. Of course, some people saying, "Oh, well, we need that feature. Why would we go without these really cool whiz bang features?" And then we also want to walk before you run. Those kinds of conversations. So all told, that process went pretty well, and it did get into 1.2, like you said. It was one of those features that was almost ready for 1.1, but kind of just missed. We call them release trains. You missed the train. But now that it's out, we can't talk much about it. It really is, like I was saying before about Dyson. It's up to their roadmap. I know they know all about the spec. They've worked with it. They've used it. They've touched it. But what does that mean for their roadmap in the US versus Europe and those kinds of things? I really don't know, so can't really speak to that. At CES, it looked like a lot of our members are going to be pushing it. Again, I can't talk to specific roadmaps or times, but it looks like that will be coming as well. So I think as soon as some of those come out, that's when the ecosystems will start to support it as well.
That's going to say, again, what are we going to see first? Are we going to see products within Matter, or are we going to see the ecosystem? Because as far as I know right now, I don't know of any that have supported, like in terms of like Smart Things, Google Home, and Apple Home. None of those support Matter 1.2 yet.
Right. So I think this was my takeaway from a lot of people I spoke to at CES, that it looks to me like the device manufacturers are going to move more quickly on the robot vacuum side and support Matter. All of them are going to have their own app as well. Like in a lot of these cases, for the mapping feature or those other AI features, they're all going to need their own app anyway. But then, it could pair with any Matter ecosystem. And so it looks to me like on the robot vacuum side, that's what's going to lead. And then we've heard that there's good interest on making sure that is supported on the ecosystem side. For air purifiers, I've kind of heard that it feels like it might be the other way around, right? Where air purifiers are a kind of interesting category for the ecosystems, and so they may end up leading on that piece. And I just didn't see much air purifier talk at CES. I don't know if you did. So I think the device manufacturers there are going to lag a little bit, and so ecosystems are hopefully going to push that one a little bit.
Okay. So with the RoboVacs, like you said, there's a set of beginning features that you guys added, and I feel the one that I'm shocked that kind of wasn't there was a mapping of like your rooms to the maps. Because to me, that's like the one thing that I want to be able to do. I want to be able to say, clean the kitchen, and I want to be able to go and do that. Do you think that's going to be a possibility down the line? Because that gets into a whole UI situation, right? Of trying to map like the 3D mapped rooms that you draw inside of like those third-party apps with your rooms in Apple Home or Matter, wherever you want to count that they're stored. But that I feel like is that one missing piece that's tough.
Yeah, so leave Matter aside for a half second. I'm also excited about that, right? This notion of like, okay, maybe it's not a Matter app or my Apple Home app, but maybe on the iRobot app, it shows me the map. Now I can integrate that into my ecosystem. And then, like I said, this is the kitchen, this is the living room, this light is in that room. You really start to map those features out, which is something that's really hard to do in any of the major ecosystem pieces. You've just got these abstract concepts of what a room is, and then you're moving things there, and each ecosystem has their own way, user interface of how to map all that. So I'm also interested in that. And I mentioned the mapping piece. It was one of those things that was like discussed and then said, yeah, we have to delay that, But like I said, it was discussed. I think it is a feature that some of the companies want to work on. One of the things that was mentioned at the time, I don't know if you remember, when iRobot announced that they could map out your house, they got kind of bad press about that. I think it was iRobot, I'm not sure, some company, because, you're spying on me, right? Like, how could you be mapping my house out without spying on me? And so that's a little bit of the give and take. I think we're going to have to navigate as well. But I think that's manageable. I don't think anybody's spying on you in this capacity, but, wouldn't it be nice to, sort of say, okay, these 3 light bulbs are in the kitchen, and maybe even have your, like you said, like a camera with a robot vacuum with a camera mounted on it, or some other like a Bluetooth device say, oh yeah, I detected that light bulb in that room, so let's put it in that room automatically, right? So it's now there's relatively easy ways you could imagine layering on where are devices in my home from something that's going to walk around your home, and maybe even, what, that light bulb hasn't been responding. Go see if it's connected, right? Maybe try to repair it with with Bluetooth or something, right? Like that kind of IT management by robot vacuum, I think, is something that, you know, could possibly be layered on all this. Again, not something that Matter's working on right now, but, just once you've got a map, what can you do with it? And a little
Yeah.
bot walking around your house, what can you do with that, right? I think there's lots of really cool things.
Yeah, I mean, because I know what you mean with the pushback on like the cameras and the mapping situation. Because I think the whole narrative was like the S7 Max V Ultra or something came out from robovac, which had the camera, and then they came out with the S8 line that was supposed to replace it, and they took away the camera, like the actual like RGB camera, because people were worried about the security implications. And I was like, I don't like this as much. I kind of want the camera. I like to be, it can take photos then of the obstacles it finds, or you can remotely tie into it and drive it around the house and, check on something because you're worried you left a stove on. And I could drive it in there and I could, see that my kitchen's on fire, like whatever the situation is, like you could do that. And I know some of them now, you can even tell them to find your dog and it'll drive around until it, finds your animals in the house. So they brought it back with their new version that they came out, like the S8 Max V Ultra. So I think security is still very important, but I think that people understand now and understand how that mapping is done with things like LiDAR that isn't quite the same as it was before.
Yeah. Do you remember there was a startup that had a security drone that you could map out your yard and then like put sensors around your yard, and if there was motion detected, the drone would fly and bring a camera and you could talk across. I don't think they ever went anywhere, but it was a really cool start idea for a startup. Same idea that you've been talking about. And I think standards can help there too, right? We got to,
Yeah,
start to
sounds like
enable.
that was a little ahead of its time at that
Probably.
point. I mean, now you've got Ring that's trying to put that drone camera in your house that'll just track down issues when it hears them. So
Yeah, I
definitely
think
an
it's a little harder to
evolution.
sell inside the house. Do you really want a drone or do you want the robot vacuum? One or the other, I guess, is something. But
I mean, the drone would allow me to see on top of the beds because that's where the dogs are half the time. So if it's the dog searching feature that's like, must have for me, then I'm gonna have to go drone. But I think for everything else, I kind of like the robot situation.
yeah,
I don't know if I
me too.
trust the drones flying
Exactly. That's
around.
taken out of land.
Well, I want to ask you about cameras next, but before we do, let's take one more break. Thank our last sponsor for this episode. I am so excited about this, Chris. Like, I really am. This is fastgrowingtrees.com. And Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the US. They have more than 10,000 different kinds of plants, over 2 million happy customers. I'm so excited because I put in my order with them and it's getting ready to ship soon because the weather is finally like warming up. And I've been eyeing them to put an order in since like last year when Steven had mentioned that he had ordered stuff through them. And I was like, this is so cool. So this year I have 2 cherry trees that we ordered. I have some blueberry bushes that are coming in, and they have a 5-in-1 apple tree, which I didn't even know was a thing. No one I know that I've talked about this to had ever heard of this either, but it's like an apple tree that they have spliced on different varieties of apples. So you can have one tree with 5 different apple types on it. And I think that is amazing. So I got an apple tree, blueberries, all this stuff, and it's all going to be shipped directly to my house. And like I said, it hasn't shipped yet because they know your zone. So they'll tell you what plants and trees are good for your zone. And then they won't ship them to you until the weather is ready. So here in Ohio, they're going to wait until towards the end of March before my trees show up because that's when they should be planted. So I love they take care of all of that for me because I don't know. I probably would have put them in the ground now and maybe that wouldn't have been good, but they took care of it so I don't have to think about it. But they have everything that you could possibly want: fruit trees, palm trees, evergreens, houseplants, so much more. They have everything broken down for your climate and your space. They've got these cool banana trees too. Like I want to grow bananas. I thought about it. I almost got a banana tree. Um, Super easy to order online. They're shipped directly to your door, 1 to 2 days, and they have a 30-day Alive and Thrive guarantee. But they also have free plant consultation forever. So you can just reach out to them and ask them all of your questions, and they will help you out. I think this website is ridiculously cool. I am so excited for my stuff, and I will update everyone with how my trees are doing. They will join the chickens and everything else that we have already out in the back. So this spring, they have the best deals online, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get an additional 15% off their first purchase when using the code HomeKit at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code HomeKit at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code HomeKit. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. I really am excited for my
I
tree.
am also a
We
former
have,
customer of them. I had a bigger house before when I kind of needed it. And now I'm a little small house, but yeah, they're good.
I think it's so cool. I had we don't need to keep talking about our sponsor, but I went to like a local nursery and I bought a Honeycrisp apple tree, and it was very expensive. And I came home and I planted it, and I came home one day and it was just fallen over. I thought somebody cut it. Turns out it rotted on the inside, and it lasted like a few weeks. And they're like, oh, sorry, there's no warranties on trees. I'm like, it was literally rotten, and then
Yeah.
just fell over in a big wind. So
Yeah.
I'm done with that. Excited for this. This sounds way more fun. So back to Matter. Let's talk about cameras. I think
Yeah.
this is a big weird one because there's two different parts of the camera support, right? There's actual just streaming support, which can even apply to doorbells, video doorbells, and then you have like the recording part, which is even less likely to show up in Matter. Tell us about cameras and Matter and where you see that heading.
Yeah. So, I mean, that from the on there's on in the perspective of those two things, I think you're right. It looks like the streaming piece is what's going to be done first. But there's definitely been talk about the storage piece as well. So, where is it going to end up? I'm not entirely sure. It might likely be the MVP type thing would be like, okay, let's do the streaming first, and then the storage would be, something proprietary, or continue to be proprietary. I think that would be an okay place to land as long as it wasn't permanent. But it feels to me like what consumers I talk to want is both to be part of a standard, right? If to help me choose where I want to store my data, So I think in the long run, what consumers want, from what I can tell, is both of those to be supported. I think it's still a little too far out for us to know if either or both of those will be in version, let's say, I say version 1.0, it's a little confusing, but, in the first version of camera support, compared to a feature like, I talk a lot about energy management, so electric vehicle support and water heater type support. Those are on a pretty quick time scale. Those will definitely be supported this year, 2024. Cameras, there's a small chance it might be in 1.4. It definitely won't be in 1.3 camera support. There's going to be better support for TCP and a couple other like sort of detail features. We've been sort of ratcheting that support up in the SDK, in 1.2 and 1.1 as well. That looks like that might be on track to be done, but nobody can use it because of just TCP support. Only developers could use, TCP support. Looks like that's going to be done in 1.3, but on the longer scale, it looks like cameras are going to be a little bit further out. And I think it comes to the piece that you're talking about here in terms of the whole thing has to be, something useful has to be supported for all of the different ecosystems, and none of them do exactly the same thing. So that means support isn't, MVP support for that's not just a small little thing. It's becoming a bigger chunk of work, which pushes it out in timescale a little bit, which is unfortunate, but also, to be, it sort of makes sense if you're realistic,
It does, but it seems to be like one of the two basic things. I feel like a lot of people start off with smart homes is like video doorbells are really popular, and smart lights are like the other big popular one. So it sucks that we don't have one of the biggest categories kind of baked into Matter, and we may not for like an entire, you know, another year. It just seems like it's a lot for something that's so popular.
Yeah, certainly if you look at it in the context of, buy this camera, work with this ecosystem, it's definitely a year out, from that perspective. And yeah, there's a couple of different reports on like, pathways into smart home and well, actually smart speakers is always the top one, but then
Okay,
cameras
yeah.
is always the next one and door locks is sort of like under there a little bit. And lighting is there in the top five. And so, yeah, it's a top five category, probably number two. And we don't really do speakers either, smart speakers, which that's also, getting worked on. Not so much smart speakers, but playing, stuff on speakers is being worked on. But yeah, it's definitely unfortunate that we even got this sort of complaint. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but feedback way back in the beginning. And it's a more complicated device. I think the ecosystems, not the ecosystems, but the camera ecosystems are more complicated, and how they support it more complex. And like I said, people have to also make money. We can't just standardize everything so that nobody can make money and then no one would use it. So that conversation is also more complicated. And so I think that's sort of represented here. But I agree with you to that extent. It's a little unfortunate that people are going to have to wait a little bit longer for that. But hopefully, it's worth the wait when we do get that support out there.
I hope so, because I'd love to be able to have, like a HomeKit doorbell show up on like my Nest Home Hub or whatever it is, like things like that. Like I want that stuff to play across, and it right now obviously it never does, and I'm still going to be angry about it until Apple decides to release some sort of smart home display, which also now sounds like it's like an entire year or something out. So I don't know as much hope in that either in the short
Yeah.
term.
And yeah, and I think a lot of homes are multi-ecosystem. How like a lot of people I've talked to, like they just use whatever people gave them, and someone gave me a Google display as a gift. I have my HomePod speaker, but then someone gave me an Alexa as a gift too. So now I've got the three, or maybe a Ring camera, and they as consumers just want it all to work, like my Apple TV. Why can't get my Ring camera displayed on my Apple TV? Is that coming? I don't know, but that's what people want, and at some point that's, some camera is going to work on some TV, and, and so I think that'll start to drive the demand, once consumers can get that to work, then, how, that's kind of what I want to see from all these standards is how does that drive consumer habits? Do consumers really want to maybe pay a little bit more for that, right? Like, for that type of interoperability, and so we need to get there and then see what consumers really, really want.
Yeah, it's definitely a confusing thing because I was just dealing with this like with my grandma. Like she really wanted a doorbell. So of course the first thing I said was like, a HomeKit one. She's got her iPhone and iPad and everything. Super easy to use Apple Home. So she has like the Wemo one on there. She loves it. She loves that it pops up on her Apple TV really nicely. She loves being able to check it from her phone and talk to people, but she wants it to ring on her Amazon speakers. Of course it
Yeah.
doesn't. I'm like, well, we could get you a home. Okay, I'll get me a HomePod Mini. I'm like, well, they're like, $80, $100. She's like, what? These were free. And she's got like three, two Amazons and a Google tiny one
Yeah,
all
exactly.
around her house. She's like, these were all free. I'm like, well, it's one thing or the other. So you're gonna have to spend more money on the speakers, or maybe like you said, you'll have to spend more money on a doorbell to get it worked with the different speakers that you have. But it's definitely something that's confusing to people, and they just want it to work. And
Exactly, and that's what we're hoping to solve. And for lighting devices, right now we've got that right. You can get that light to talk to each of those different things, and that's a step forward. And then cameras are just a little bit more complicated, but I do believe that's the long term goal here, to get that camera to show up everywhere, to at least notify everywhere. Right? Maybe it
mhm.
can't display the image on that other TV, but on any Matter device, and it can at least notify like motion detected doorbell pressed. That would be a huge step forward.
What about routers? We have talked a lot about routers recently because it was like Apple may or may not have discontinued Apple Home router support. Like, we'd heard from a few vendors that they had stopped like accepting new entrants into the Apple Home router space. So if Apple Home did kind of you started to wind down support for native routers, are we ever going to see routers of some sort inside of Matter?
Yeah, we do have a very active group. We call it HRAP. We like weird acronyms. So Home Router and Access Point is a very active project. It does, we're working very closely with the other alliances, Wi-Fi and Thread, to integrate their cool new features that they've got coming to make the onboarding process easier. The sort of Wi-Fi, what do they call that? Like this device, the doorbell becomes an access point for a while. You got to pair your phone to that. I forget what that's called, which is actually supported in Matter. But that is such a pain. No one wants to do that. So easier ways to get, to have devices sort of discover, and then, even if there's no display, get onto the Wi-Fi and Thread networks. So that work is being done there as well. So there's lots of interesting work all being done there. And I don't know. I can't speak to what you asked specifically about
Sure.
Apple's ecosystem support there. But that's a possibility that because of this work, that might be why they might be moving their resources over, that kind of thing. But yeah, we're excited about that. And then also just, like, what are the telcos going to do in the router space? Verizon just recently joined our board. And so what is their Matter play going to be? It's probably going to be some kind of a home router and stuff. So enabling that whole, other possible IoT supplier, not just the big ecosystems, but what would Verizon do? What, in other parts of the world, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Samsung, have differing amounts of market share. So some of those spots in the world, I think the telco might be able to play a bigger piece. And so how does Matter play into that? That's something I'm really excited about. But that is a relatively longer term work stream.
Okay. Well, is there any other aspects of Matter that you want to talk about, whether they're ones that are like coming out soon that you're excited about, or longer term projects? Because I could just sit here and poke you about like every device type ever that's not in Matter and try to get any information out of you. But what are you excited about? Where do you kind of want to see Matter go, both long term, short term, anything like that?
Yeah, so for me, and this is both long term and short term, and I vaguely mentioned it before, but energy management. Like I love this notion of, like, let's say you're an Apple home, and so you use your iPhone to pair to your hot water heater, your electric vehicle charger, your solar panels, your pool pump, all of this, and it's all sitting there on Matter. And from a command perspective, that's not that interesting. But now from a money saving perspective, it gets extremely interesting, right? Like as your solar panel starts to kick out extra energy, that's when you run your pool pump. It only has to run 8 or 9 hours a day. It does not have to run 24 hours a day. So run it when it's free, right? When the solar is kicking out extra. So like basically erase that from my energy bill. For enough solar panels, the same thing could be true for your electric vehicle charger or your hot water heating, right? Certain other flexible loads on terms of your appliance, you can't really get that with HVAC because you need to, and that needs to run at night, that kind of thing. But for lots of these really flexible loads like battery charging in an electric vehicle, you can really start to reduce your carbon footprint and your bill. You buy that electric vehicle that's a lot cheaper than gas, assuming you're paying, whatever, 12 cents a kilowatt hour for your electric vehicle. But if you're only getting that from solar, now that can almost become free, right? So you're driving around all day long for free. And with the smart enough system and enough solar panels, I think that would really start to bring back interest in solar panels, which has historically, to my knowledge, always been, when my government is giving me a tax rebate, that's when people are installing solar and not any other time. But if you can really cross this chasm where, an energy management system, I was trying to do scare quotes there, energy management system can be just an app, right? I download an app to connect it to my Apple Home or whatever other ecosystem. that's going to really widen that serviceable market there and really start to do something in this energy management, in the save the world from carbon decarbonization type efforts, in a really interesting way. And so I'm really excited about that. And we do have electric vehicles and I call them water heaters here, but we're actually looking into a broader footprint than that. But that's going to be sometime during 2024. We're not entirely sure yet, but those are the near term thing. And then solar inverters and other things will be on a slightly longer term. But I think that's extremely key set of functionality for us to bring, widen the definition of what smart home is in an extremely useful way to solve a problem.
Awesome. I love it. We're trying to put in like a battery backup system for our house. So like I've been looking at the different, like trying to go like piecemeal, right? Start with the battery and deal with some of these brownouts that we keep happening here and protect us from even like short-term power outages. Then bring in the solar to help supplement our energy and get our, cost down because it does keep, seeming to go up. So if we can offset that kind of stuff and then being able to make that stuff smart, like you said, and getting to work together would be a very nice dream. But at least we're seeing the groundwork.
Well, in a worldwide sense, I think this is a slightly bigger problem in Europe right now, with what's happening in Ukraine and just other energy spikes that are happening there a little bit more urgently than here. So we're seeing a little bit more innovation, but we're seeing a little more driving of this topic there. But I just think it would just be so cool to have those features there and then to be able to just have an app sitting on your phone and see how much money you're saving and, really, feel like you're making a difference in the world too,
Yeah, absolutely. So Matter 1.2 spec is out now. When can we expect to hear more about Matter 1.3 maybe?
Yeah, so we've committed to 6-month releases. So we have a spring release and a fall. So 1.1 was the spring and 1.2 was fall of last year. So 1.3 should be coming out here in the next couple of months, before summer. And then 1.4 will follow that 6 months later. It tends to be about May and then November timeframes is what we've been doing, but there's probably a little bit of leeway on that front. And right now, because of our member-driven focus, we don't talk too much about specifically what's in one release or the other. We're trying to get better about that. I'm trying to get us better about that. And so we'll see how successful I can be on that. But like I said, we do have features that we know are like they're. Let me rewind a little bit. These are trains leaving the station, and some features are probably going to miss the train. But anything that misses that 1.3 train will almost certainly be on the 1.4 train. So that's why I'm mentioning those energy management features. They're going to be on one of those 2 trains. So coming out this year, and a couple other features like that are also something we can talk about later, maybe.
Awesome. I love it. Anywhere where you would like to point everyone following this episode, whether anything for you or CSA, learn more about Matter, anything like that?
Yeah, certainly our website, csa-iot.org, has more information. Primarily a big push of why we go out and talk about this at all is this sort of call to action. If there are companies out there that are interested in a feature or providing a device type, then that's when they should come to our website. In particular, reach out to me and get people to join to drive those features forward. That's what really provides some better clarity on when a release will be done when we have 10 companies working on it versus 3 or 4, where if 1 or 2 drop out, now that feature's delayed. So that's always a good thing for us, just to have more companies telling us how that particular feature should work.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I will link to the CSA website in the show notes. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us. Thank you to the sponsors for this episode. Everyone, do what you guys do best. Go ahead and give us a 500, 200-star review on your favorite podcast player. Check the video version, youtube.com/HomeKit Insider. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Chris, thank you so much again for stopping by.
Thanks again, Andrew, for having me. It's been a lot of fun.